Hi guys, what's going on? It's only episode 77 edition. The 77th edition of the Chronicles of Podcast. No, we didn't do episodes around here, boys. Fucking hell, we're posh. No, we're not. But Jamie, we're back with another edition of the Chronicles of Podcast, and I do believe this week we actually have a guest.
Yes, we're back to normal.
Beautiful. We can't wait for this. I do believe that right here, just off screen, literally under that little black bit right there, are the Chronicles of Kiff Vandenheuvel.
Yeah, they are.
Beautiful. Let's get started. Hit it.
Hey, honey bunny, it's Rivka Reyes.
This is Ron Wasserman, the nut that wrote Go-Go Power Rangers.
It's Boba Fett here.
This is Molly Rennick from Living Dead Girl.
It's WWE superstar, legend, Davey Boy Smith's daughter, Georgia Smith.
Here we go. Hey, it's Nicolas Cage. I just want to start by welcoming you to the Chronicles of Podcast with Jamie and Tom. So welcome. Actually, it's not Nick Cage. It's Harrison Ford. You're listening to the Chronicles of Podcast. What are you doing? Al Pacino. Chronicles of Podcast. Jamie and Tom. Let's go. Hi, Kiff Vandenheuvel. I'm the guy who just did all that. Welcome to the Chronicles of Podcast with Jamie and Tom. Here we go.
Fuck those keyboard warriors. No one gives, some people think that they've just got a platform to say whatever the hell they like now, and it just does my head in. So I feel you, kid. Fuck those guys.
Boys and girls, please join us as we welcome the man with possibly the greatest name we have ever interviewed.
I do believe it's time to bring in that piece, Jamie. Should we bring the piece in?
Oh, go on, bring it in.
Welcome to the Chronicles of Kiff Vandenheuvel.
To sing the national anthem right now, for some reason, Miss Cyndi Lauper.
This is an incredible interview, ladies and gentlemen. Kiff is an American character actor. He's a voiceover artist. He does it all. He's absolutely phenomenal. And this is genuinely one of my favorite interviews we've ever done. Like, I discovered Kiff because I started watching Young Rock, and he plays wrestling legend Pat Patterson in it. And I was like, this guy is great. He portrays Pat so well. And I was just looking him up and I was like, he's done fucking tons. And he's been in so many amazing shows. Like, we got to talk to this guy, and talk to this guy we did. Oh, this is...
If you're a fan of impressions, he also voices over on video games. He's also in The Croods. He is in This Is Us, in The Blacklist. He's in so much NCIS. This is the interview for you. Jamie! Oh, excuse me, I'm excited again. Jamie!
Yes, sir.
I full on burped on water. Any final words at all?
Just a massive thank you to Kiff. Massively appreciate you coming on this show, sir. Oh, this is just a doozy, as they say.
It is a doozy, boys. It's a lengthy one as well. So sit back and fucking enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, interviewing this week, it's Kiff Vandenheuvel.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we bring you another incredible guest. Today's guest is an incredible voice actor and character actor who's worked in video games, TV, movies, you name it. A man who came to my attention with his amazing portrayal of wrestling legend Pat Patterson in hit NBC show Young Rock. Boys and girls, please join us as we welcome the man with possibly the greatest name we have ever interviewed. We bring you the Chronicles of Kiff Vandenheuvel.
Oh, man. Jamie and Tom, thank you so much for having me, guys.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, Kiff, to have you here. So I suppose we should really get into the real nitty-gritty, the things that everybody listening to this will want to know straight from the off. How was your pandemic season? I know it's kind of still here-ish, but the last few years. First of all, we were very lucky not to lose anybody in our immediate family from COVID. My wife's extended family did. But everyone lost. We all lost a lot. But we also gained things. And
For me professionally, I'm so grateful that I had this microphone and had a booth and was able to record from home and prepared to record from home. And I just booked the Crude's Family Tree. I play Grug on the show, and I booked it. Literally, we did the table read on March 8th. So things shut down on the 10th, if memory serves. So, I book a series regular on an animated series, and pandemic shuts us down, and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. And DreamWorks, fortunately, was able to find a way to thread the needle, and we did it via Zoom with self-recording. And then the Screen Actors Guild made it possible for certain studios to apply, very stringent policies and whatnot, but to get actors into the booth. So I was able to continue working throughout the pandemic without stop. And then Young Rock. So it was, again, this is all professionally, but so I did some games, several games. I did some e-learning. I did commercials. I did trailers, voice matching, all the things that I typically do, but just from home, and had to really up my game with Pro Tools, with having a better sense of how to use that software. Not that every voice actor needs to use Pro Tools, but it's still something that was really helpful to learn that skill set. And then, and then Young Rock came to me in the second year of the pandemic, and that was due to how they were shooting in Australia, because Queensland had just completely locked their borders. So after everyone coming in would quarantine for 2 weeks, and then after the quarantine was done, it was basically Queensland was just a big bubble. So we were able to work and work safely, and COVID really didn't strike us until they opened the borders and Omicron hit at the same time. But that was season 2 of Young Rock, and then season 3 we just shot in Memphis this past year.
I had no idea that was shot in Australia.
Yeah. Isn't that remarkable? Yeah. I mean, it really is crazy. Like both first and second seasons were shot there, and it doubled, it's a brilliant place to like double Hawaii, and then also Memphis and Pennsylvania and Miami. Like you have all of that accessible in the Gold Coast. Like you really could, there was so much we could do. So they had just finished Elvis right when we started, season 2 at the same studios not Legacy, what is it, Village Roadshow. So it was amazing. What else? Go ahead.
I love this one thing we get a lot on this show is because obviously the pandemic, everyone was like, oh, it's horrible, it's negative, which it was, do not get me wrong, but the amount of people that say like, yeah, it was bad, but I did this, I got to do this, I got to do this. It's great hearing all the positivity. It always warms my heart.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it really speaks to the resilience of people. And I was thinking about it this morning. I forget what started the thought process, but it was about, it might have been politics or something. But like when getting hit with something sort of perceptibly horrible, and then how we accept and pivot. Like there's an element of grieving that part of grief is figuring out how to be like Bruce Lee said, to be like water. Like there's rocks and obstacles that come down our path, and our job is not to get blocked like ice in front of it, but to melt and be like water and move past and around those obstacles and accept them and take them in as part of your story, and how it strengthens you and how it moves you forward. I just did a series of headshots with this brilliant photographer here in Los Angeles named David Zaw. And I had a casting director back in Chicago who had said the best time to get new headshots as an actor is to get them after a significant life change. And like when you think about it, we've all gone through a massive life change with the pandemic, with the lockdown. I lost my mother last April, and I've been on Young Rock shooting and got a tattoo, and like all these other elements of change and major life changes that going in and taking pictures now. Like the crazy thing is when your agent sends out your headshots, and if you've put on weight or you're just different, then like those pictures get accepted, and then you're like, oh shit, I gotta rise to how am I gonna suck my gut in it? But these pictures capture me in my truth right now, and there's a confidence that comes with it. And like for anyone who's listening, who's interested in any aspect of the performing arts, stage, screen, voiceover, name it. Honestly, confidence is the currency of our business. You know, I mean, you can be moderately talented, but if you have a lot of confidence, you'll go very far. But I also feel like that's the X factor for you might really be a vulnerable, wonderful actor, but if you freeze up in auditions and you don't have the confidence in that space, it'll be really, really hard to work. So it's finding that balance of building your confidence with experience, and also, you know, just internal work. There's a great sports performance psychologist named Don Green who specializes in building confidence, and it's really, really powerful and helpful work, and it's made a difference in my life. So anyway, there's my short answer to your long question.
So take us back, sir. Take us to the days of young Master Vandenheuvel. What did you originally aspire to be when you were growing up?
Oh, I wanted to be an actor. I mean, I like to blame, what was it? It was either Star Wars or Ghostbusters. Like all these movies are like, you know, they craft and pivot your story, right? So like Star Wars just made me want to be a storyteller in one way or another. And then I discovered that I could do voices. So I could do the voice of Yogi Bear and Daffy Duck, and I couldn't do Bugs Bunny until I got much older. But like, you know, and they're kid impressions, but it's still like around the dinner table cracking people up. And then I put it together really in junior high, where I was like, I want to do this. And growing up where I grew up was like, there were no templates for anybody. I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan in the US, and there was no template for getting out to do this work from there. Grand Rapids is I say it's like a little valley of Christian Reformed conservatism that I was laid into this nest, and that was how it was built. Like this was a community for all of the previous generation to nurture and build the kind of place that they would want their children to grow up in. And we did. And I was like, I got to get out of this nest. This is not a place for me. And as an extrovert and as someone who loved to perform, the real main option for me was either being a teacher or going to the pulpit. And I had two grandfathers who were ministers in the Christian Reformed Church, two uncles. So like, they were like, you are really lining up for the ministry. And I was like, yeah, but I like Eddie Murphy too much. I don't think I'm the right, I'm not cut from that fabric. I felt like if, you know, and I converted to Catholicism just so, you know, my wife and I could worship at the same place. But like, my feeling on it was, we have plenty of preachers. Like, if you want to have people of faith in the industry, I'm happy to go do that. And it's not like I'm going to go make Billy Graham movies or whatever. I want to make the stuff that I've been a part of, but I'm more interested in being, you know, having the fun and doing the work that I love to do, but also being a light and being, you know, like, if the idea for true Christianity, at least to me anyway, is just to be a light, and love and model that, and then go have fun. And I think a lot of people will disagree with me, but that's fine. I just feel like that was my calling and direction that I wanted to go. And my parents fought me on it, man. Like, I had to harbor my desire to do this work, and keep it pretty close to the vest, because if I revealed it, then it was like, oh, it's a godless Babylon and you can't go and do that. And this is not a place for you. And you're, you know, this is, you know, we're just worried about you and your soul. And, you know, so I learned to keep my mouth shut. And then when I was in high school, did the plays, worked with a company called the Pine Rest Players, where I grew up in Cutlerville. This is the point. You're interviewing me, so it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Go for it.
Pine Rest is a mental institution, a Christian mental institution in Cutlerville, Michigan, which is where I'm from. So my father worked there for his entire career. My mother worked there for many, many years, like on the switchboard, but then also designing banners and things. My grandfather was the chaplain there. It was Cutlerville is that's the industry there, is the mental health facility. So part of that, they had an outreach program called the Pine Rest Players. And what we would do is take case studies from their outpatient services and role play those characters, but we would go to community events. So we would go in, let's say a church group wanted to do a thing, and the Pine Rest players come in, and then it would just be an improvised panel. So it'd be me, and my dad started doing it as well, and he would play my father, and then a woman would play my mother, and then we would role play about like how my character is using drugs and is heading on a downward path, and the message being not the drugs, but the parents' responsibility to connect. Like where are the points where these people aren't connecting to each other, and then giving the audience opportunities to ask leading questions or to try to understand things better. And then we would role play based on how we had studied these characters and their scenarios. It was great. And it taught me so much. I never anticipated that, doing this little outreach program in Cutlerville, Michigan was going to help me as an improviser, as an actor, as a listener, as just as someone who it helped me build my empathy at a really important time. So all those things factored into it. And then I started doing as a family, we had gone to the Epcot Center, gone down to, Disney World. And there was a company that was doing street theater in the World Showcase at Epcot. And I only know this because I heard it talked about on another podcast that was how this originated. But one of the shows that they were doing was this little show called Dennis the Menace of Venice. It was a 10-minute street performer, one guy with a few wigs. And that piece made such an impact on me that I made my own version when I got back home and like started performing for church groups and weddings and that kind of stuff in the community. And that was my side hustle. That was my job in high school and college, was kind of emceeing, newlywed games, just kind of being like the guy in the community who could do that stuff. So then when I got to college, I started to pursue it a little bit more aggressively. And my teachers at college, I went to Calvin College in Grand Rapids, really said to my folks, like, not only does he have the skill and the drive to do this work, but there's nothing wrong with this work. Like, stop believing the lie that it's not a viable career path for people of faith to participate in. That's nonsense. So support him if he wants to do it. And that was when things started to turn around. And I started, yeah, man, great teachers, but like trusting, wow. It's interesting. I'm putting something together now about literally in this moment of like the advantage of going to a Christian university at that point and have it validated from inside the tribe, no, it's okay to go outside the bubble. If I had gone to a state university or if I had gone to someplace else, that message would not have been as well received by my parents as they did from where I was. So there you go. The mesh completes even more so. So there you go. Thanks for that, guys. I appreciate that.
I love that though. You say like there's so many different inspirations that led to you doing what you're doing. Star Wars, Ghostbusters, The Thing at Epcot, the men. Like that's amazing to have all these different inspirations, and it makes sense why you spin so many plates with voice acting and improv and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, man.
You were talking about your grandfather earlier, and I read somewhere, I can't remember what it was, I read it online, saying that you used to go into your grandfather's study and play with his recording equipment, and that's sort of where your love of voiceover came from. Is that right?
Yeah. He had a, this doesn't date me, I'm 52. So this is the tech that we had, and he had 70s tech. So it was like not cutting edge, but it was like, it started with just dubbing tapes, like making mixtapes for your friends. It was a dual cassette deck, but he noticed that he had a microphone input and then a mic. So I started screwing around with the equipment and figured it out, and would bring blank cassettes from home and record and start playing with my voice and doing impressions of the radio guys at WKLQ in Grand Rapids, their morning zoo, doing impressions of their characters and then dubbing some music, and then coming in as Bruce Springsteen, like just doing a bunch of, just playing. And it started, that was really where I started to learn about mic proximity and like, that kind of stuff, and the things of like how you can I'll be right there. How you can make that sound like there's proximity effect when you're off mic and then on mic. So like just learning a lot of technical things just became kind of innate. And then the other part of it, I can't like that was another really formative time was when I was living in Cleveland, working at the Second City, and the theater closed, and we had moved there to work at that theater, and the theater closed, and we still had time on our lease, so we couldn't just pack up and go. Well, Detroit is about 3 hours away from Cleveland, and I'd never dropped my representation there, so I would drive to Cleveland to Detroit and back. So it was like a 6-hour round trip of just driving and smoking and drinking coffee or Diet Coke at the time. And then just doing impressions to myself, talking to myself, reading billboards, ear prompting off of the radio. What ear prompting off the radio is to build the prompting skill is put on like a talk radio station and then repeat what you hear about 3 syllables or 4 syllables after it's said, and then kind of shutting your mind off and just kind of echoing it. That skill is extremely helpful for if you got to do a 10-minute, like you're standing on a turntable at auto show and you got to give a presentation that's 10 minutes long and it's really challenging to memorize. You record the script on a little tape recorder and then plug a little headphone in and then you can ear prompt it. You just repeat what's there. And that skill got developed while I was driving and, helped me make some money when we were in Chicago when I first got started there. So like all these things feed each other. And it's about being open to receive what you are communicated at from the universe, but different things that are interested or that sparks you. And so there you go. But that's that was Grandpa's equipment and his pipe tobacco and a stopwatch and jackknife. Like I just remember all the stuff in the desk. Like you could make a VR game of that spot and I would be completely happy just to sit and screw around with a windproof Zippo lighter and a pipe. And
incredible. Sorry, David, go on.
No. I was just gonna say, I feel like everyone had that phase of like pretending they were a radio host at some point. Like
right?
Me and Tom were talking about like a couple of days ago, even saying his amazing story about throwing socks in the air. Like it's just amazing that everyone wants to do that at some point. It feels like
there's something about to me, it's like it's about being heard. Like we listen to things that are broadcast. We make assumptions that just because someone's on TV or on the radio that someone vetted them and said, go for it. Yeah. No, what you have to say is valuable. And, now you guys know you've built your own podcast. No one gave you permission. Like you just went out there and did it. And once you put it out, you're suddenly an authority because your voice is broadcast. But like at college radio, I couldn't believe it that it was that easy. They just gave me a show. I was like, you're not going to vet me? I have no experience whatsoever. Like, that's what this is for, kid. No one's listening, but go for it. But then it's goes back to what I was saying about confidence. The confidence to say, I have something to say. Now, whether what I have to say you think is valuable or not, who cares? What matters is I've got a channel. I've got an opportunity to amplify myself. And I think that you start and having the accessibility of it with TikTok, with Instagram Live, etc., makes people, there you go. I think, but I do think at its root, it's about being heard and being accepted by the tribe, man. And being listened to and agreed with or validated or whatever.
I love that.
Absolutely. It's spot on. Absolutely beautiful. This is fucking fantastic. So I read that you were an alumni of, you mentioned Second City, Cleveland, and Detroit as well. And when I read it, I thought it meant that you had to graduate in Cleveland, then graduate in Detroit to be able to work in those states. But obviously, that's not the case at all. It's just that you just work both. But that's a great distinction. It's a distinction that's so internal that outside it's very confusing. So I appreciate you reflecting that back to me because that makes a lot of sense. I understand what you mean. I cut you off with your question. No, you're all good. You're all good. So obviously improv. So you're saying like you did your radio show and everything, and you did the things with the medical center where you're doing like improv stuff like that. That is an insane skill to have because improv is so difficult. Because obviously people just go, Oh, you go, oh, give me a name, give me a job. What are they doing or something? You got to go, boom, just do straight up in the off. Like, how long have you been doing that for now? Quite a while, I imagine.
Yeah, about 30 years now. I started
Incredible.
in college. The thing is though, man, it's not hard. It's not. We're improvising right now, and we're playing our roles. All you need to do to improvise is, and so this is pretty obvious. I teach it as well, so that's why I'm like, all right, freeze. So here's what's going on. Dude, improv is three skills. It's agreement. It's agreeing to not deny, and it's you know, in the context of an interview, it's impossible. But in the scene, you just try not to ask questions. So like that's really all you need to do. The cornerstone of it is that we are in agreement of a virtual thing that we create. If I take this ball, and I say this is a red ball, and I throw it to you through the screen, and you catch it, you've just agreed with me with the reality of not only the size of the ball that I built, but that I threw it at a certain tempo, and you yes-anded the energy with which that you throw it. And that little exercise is no different than the audience going, then you saying to an audience, give me a name, give me a profession, give me a location, and what are we doing? And then I'm just agreeing. And if you go, okay, Kiff, your name is, Dr. Fitzroy, and you're a doctor and you're about to operate, go. Then I just, I take on that, specific action of, what it is. And it's just, it's honestly, it's not rocket science. It's just playing, because it's inherent in all of us. We all did it when we were like 5 or 6 of like, oh, we're going to play doctors now. Maybe not doctors. We're going to play cops and robbers. All right, cool. We're going to play cops and robbers. And all of a sudden we got masks and we're walking around like robbers. It's the exact same thing. It's just giving ourselves permission to commit to the play. And when you commit to it, it's super easy and really, really fun. But the other skill set that's really important, I think, that will improve your longevity, is your ability to listen. That's the other part. It's like you really need to listen to your partner. And that's at the heart of all acting as well. But, let me unplug the Alexa so we don't have someone chiming in. You have to really listen to your partner and respond. And the best improvisers are the ones who will like pick things out that the audience doesn't get. And amplify those things so that the audience is like completely blown away by their attention to detail in their listening. That's really at the corner, I think, of the cornerstone of what you see with great improvisation. But yeah, with just a sidebar with the alumni, what that term means internally within Second City is that, like, there's a training center and you can graduate from the training center and then you're considered a graduate. But if you're an alumni, meaning that you wrote main stage reviews. So at Second City Detroit, I started there and I was on their main stage cast. So we performed, 7 nights or 6 nights a week. And it was just straight open-ended paid acting gig. And at Second City, we would improvise to write. That was the intention, is like we would improvise during the day. And then the best scenes that we came up with through improvisation, we would write down and put that into our show at night. So we did 3 reviews while we were there. And then when Second City Cleveland opened, because I had taught there and was an alumni at that point, they brought me over there, did 2 reviews when it closed. And then when we moved to Chicago, at that time, it was like, I've done 5 reviews. I'm interested in pursuing other things. I'll teach. And then I also started teaching in a voiceover class there, just because I was, destroying in voiceover in Chicago. And then I also directed the touring company. So that's, and then when I got out here to Los Angeles, just been working with them, for the past 11 years as well.
Do you ever have time to like breathe or eat or live at all? Like,
yeah, it's the gift of Los Angeles traffic. Listen to podcasts and relax. And when you get there, I mean, it's, I'm fortunate, man. I've packed a lot into this career, but I love it, man. And I'm evangelical for it. I think that there's room for everybody. If it's just type of work that strikes you. I mean, we're not in a 4 network or 3 network world anymore. Like there's so much content. There's so much content. And if you're interested in it, and look, voice actors and actors and all the people who are doing it are retiring every day. There's always room for new people. We want new people. And so I encourage folks to like get into it. And if it's something that you're passionate about, you know, there were no resources like there are now. When I was growing up, I had to figure out everything on my own. So being able to share what I've learned, and if people find an ace they can keep in that, then as far as I'm concerned, that's a win.
So how do you go from improv at Second City, all the work you're doing there and everything, to working onto TV? Was that a conscious decision to move into that sort of work, or did it just sort of like you got offered something because of what you were doing elsewhere?
Well, when I got started in Detroit, my talent agency there, his name, it was affiliated. That was the agency. It was a small enough agency, and Detroit was a union town because of the auto workers. They also were a union as far as actors were concerned. So the Screen Actors Guild had an office there, and it doesn't take very long if you're working in a smaller market to get to join the union. And that was what happened. The majority of the work that I did while I was in Detroit was industrial films, internal training for Ford Motor Company, internal training for GM's, for General Motors, for Chevrolet, but then also regional commercials, local commercials. And then if a feature comes to town, it happens rarely, but it does. And it would be like an all hands on deck. Everyone gets an audition for it. So that was how I got on camera, was Billy Crystal's movie 61 he shot, and I got cast as like Detroit fan number 2, and my scene got cut out or whatever, but it was still like I got on set and it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I did another movie, Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell had a small role in it, but it was called Time Quest. And that was my first picture. But when we moved to Chicago from Cleveland, the Chicago market was a little bit bigger than Detroit, a lot more commercial and a little bit more on-camera TV and film. And I did more on-camera commercial work there, but couldn't really crack a lot of theatrical television. And ultimately what moved us out to Los Angeles was the notion of like, you know, we want to see how high we can jump. So let's go to LA and see if we can crack into on camera. And getting repped was really, really hard. And I was, like I said, I was set in voiceover and doing very well, but on camera, it was a really tough transition to make. And, an agent took a chance on me and brought me in, and I booked a couple things, and then I got management, booked a few more things, and we changed agencies and started booking more things. So over the course of time, here in Los Angeles, I've been able to accrue a lot of great on-camera television work and film work. But that's been, kind of on the back of getting, I think, Behind the Candelabra was really the show that opened a lot of things up for me. That and Parks and Recreation. When those two jobs happened, it made it a lot easier to start to get seen by casting directors and get cast. So, yeah.
You mentioned then about Time Quest. So what can you remember about filming that, though? Because, being on a set for the first time, that must have been nerve-wracking. No matter how small the role is, you're on a set of a movie.
Well, I'll tell you this. Like, my first on-set experience, I crewed for 2 seasons on a TV series called Christie for CBS. And it was a show starring Kelly Martin and Tyne Daly. And I got that job. One of my professors from Calvin had built a relationship with one of the executive producers, and he used that relationship to get me hired on as work as a local hire and work utility sound on a TV series. And that was my real education of being on set, understanding the rules, understanding the set etiquette, understanding my place in the hierarchy as essentially an assistant to the audio department. So I was a production assistant, but a technical one. So a lot of cable wrapping, a lot of miking, second boom, that kind of stuff. And then I put the ADR booth together in a couple honey wagon trailers in Tennessee. Like, it was a matter of really learning what it's like to be on a set of a big show. I mean, LeVar Burton was on our show, John Schneider, who else? God. Delta Burke, like a lot of names from, in particular folks who had elevated during the 90s, but but I mean, Tyne Daly is a legend. So that experience really prepped me for when I got to Detroit and was working as an actor on camera. Then it was like, oh, I know where the sound card is, and I know who the grips are, and I know what this equipment does, and I know what the process of miking is, and I'd watch the actors be prepared, and I had like 1 or 2 lines on Time Quest. It wasn't intense at all. So it was like, and it was an independent production. Same thing with 61. Like there's elements of the set experience that are universal. So that made those spaces, even on Young Rock, feel so much more comfortable. And that, again, coming back to confidence, like I talk, like having that experience on set, walking on there and knowing who to reach when you get to set. Like, I got to call production, someone from the production team, to let them know I'm here. If they didn't greet me, I got to track them down. That's on me. So like that kind of knowledge is something that really makes a difference and keeps you present and confident as you're working. I think that's something that's valuable. Anyone who wants to work, I think you should at least, work as an extra once or twice just to get a feel for the sound and the smell and the atmosphere of being on set, and where you can go and where you can't, and where you should and where you shouldn't. It's not like college. No one's telling you can and can't go anywhere. It's just, people just look at you. So it's like, it's nice to, figure that out. Stay by your trailer, stay by hair and makeup. They're your friends.
Stuff like that, though, that knowledge is invaluable, because you're working on a production, you make a good impression. That person works in another production. Oh, we need to go. I know a guy. He was so professional. Let's get him in. He was great.
Dude. I mean, for this headshot session that I just did with Zaw, like I called our key makeup artist from Young Rock for this last season and reached out to her. Was like, hey, I'm getting headshots. Would you come and do me, and I'll pay you. And she was like, yeah, man, absolutely. We're all in LA. So it made it super easy. It was great to reconnect. But again, it's about building those relationships. And, it's not just a relationship. People go, it's a relationship business, but it's like, you guys are friends. Here you are doing a show together. It's like, it's the same thing. Like, you work with people that you want to work with. And, sometimes you're in front of the camera and sometimes you're behind, and it's all about finding people who you really enjoy creating with, and continuing to broaden that circle. Like, 10 years ago, I reached out to a bunch of voice actors who were all buddies of mine from my talent agency, and started a show at Stan Lee's Kamikaze called Voice NATO. And we're just doing like a live con impression show. It's a combination of short form improv plus voice matching and doing ADR and doing it live and just having a blast. We've done it 10 years now, and like they've become my tribe of actors. And everyone, when we started, like none of us had any credits of note. Like the one guy who was like known for something was Fred Tatasciore, who had done the Hulk. So we were kind of like, Fred, we put our, the PowerPoint presentation with everybody's credits. And then every year you'd watch everybody's credits like get like embellished and more embellished, to the point where now all of us on there, it's a total murderer's row. And it's so exciting to like have been along these actors and to have grown together. Even though we only play together once a year, it's still like this. It's really special to witness that.
It's amazing. I mean, your enthusiasm and your love for what you do as well, it really comes through every time. Just when you're talking now, it's just like I'm feeling that, the excitement. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to go and like do something now. Like, guys, I'm actually going to go now. This has been great.
I was just thinking, I could do improv. He's right, it's easy. I mean, have to say, guys.
Yeah, you can. Don't be a dick, but you can. Like, that's the guardrail. That's the electric fence. Don't be an asshole to your scene partners. That's how you make great scenes. Is like really listen. Really, like I remember judging a cage match in Chicago, and it was like 4 improv groups doing 4 10-minute sets, and then we would give like adjudication at the end of it. And I remember one group, and they were killing, but it was 6 guys and 2 girls, and the guys were funny, but they were gunslingers, man. They They just steamrolled over their partners, in particular their female partners. And like, I was one of 3 judges, and 2 of the judges were like, "You guys are so funny," and oh my god, and it came to me, and I was like, you guys are funny, but the way you improvise, you should all be doing stand up, because the way you treated your female your female ensemble members is an embarrassment. Like, if you're not listening to each other or treating them with respect, you have no business sharing the stage with them. Don't bring stand-up energy to improvisation. That's not it's not the essence of the work. It's really not. Viola Spolin created it for the purpose of taking veteran actors and student actors and putting them in the same space so that they could work on a Shakespeare play together. But the challenge is, student actors are just learning. They don't know the terms. They don't know how to find their light. They don't know upstage, downstage. Maybe that's the extent of what they know, versus someone who's been working for 40 years, who knows everything, who is telling ghost stories. You know what I mean? So like, Viola Spolin created a language that was centered around play. It was called improvisation. And that's what her rules of improv are. It's to get everybody into the room, and here's the rules. Yes, and don't deny, avoid questions. And now we're going to play small improv short form games so that we can all find common language and common experience. And now we can work together moving forward, and we can use that language. That's the intention behind Viola Spolin's improvisation for the theater. So when you take the form and then reject the idea of, I'm going to support everybody, it undermines the whole point. It's some freak abomination of the idea. It's just basically, free form, ruleless yelling. And if a scene emerges, good for us, but generally it doesn't. And it's just a lot of crass people who don't have the discipline to do stand up, getting up and shooting their extroversion all of an audience to happy applause, because there's no magic trick to it. It's just getting up there and just being obnoxious. Take a stand-up class. I'm not trying to take anything away from their gifts, but I do feel like if you're going to be in a group sport, you got to learn how to play like a group. That's the challenge. So there you go. There's my rant. Once you cross 50, you get a little crunchy. You care a little bit less about what people have to say.
We might have to just edit in a standing ovation for that. Just because that was magnificent. I was just like, I was there going, cool, yeah, I love it. I just wanted to get myself to start going mental.
And now you see why my parents wanted me to be a preacher. So, but like I said, I get to, I love this work. I love this work, and this work needs an evangelist in it.
I mean, go on, Jody.
No, I've asked so many questions. Have a go.
Your TV features are nuts. When I was going through your IMDb, and I'm just like, oh my days. Parks and Rec, like you mentioned, This Is Us. You did a voice on Family Guy as Sheriff Woodley. NCIS, one of the greatest TV series ever, The Blacklist. Oh my days, straight. I love that show so much. Mosquito Coast, that's on my list, and I watched that at some point as well. You did a voice in What If, you've been in Young Rock. Like, it's just insane. The back catalogue is absolutely monumental. But like, even though you're only playing, like, I'm on 2 episodes, I'm only on 1 episode or whatever, just being in that realm with those people on those sets must be memories for days.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. I love it. I love it. There's no place else I want to be. It's the greatest place on earth is to be on set. I mean, and I do have like really specific memories of a lot, like the NCIS, like the coolest thing of that one. Like, so here's some internal stuff, like, and you hit on it, like working a day on the Mosquito Coast or 2 days. Mosquito Coast was great. That's like, because that was the first episode. And we were getting ready to go shoot it, and I got invited to the table read. That doesn't always happen. For like, I can count on one hand the shows that I've been invited to do the table reads in. Like, obviously Richie Rich is the series reg, and Young Rock, because it was a heavy guest star and recurring and stuff. And we always I did it right here in this chair and this computer for like table reads for while we were here and they were in Memphis or in Australia or wherever. But like, going in person to getting invited for the NCIS one, where it was like I had one line. It was a walk and talk at the beginning of an episode, but they still thought enough to invite me to drive out to the production office. And then I'm there a little bit early. I'm at the table read. There's like one or two other people. And then my dear friend, someone I met at Second City here in LA, Deanna Reasonover, walks in, and she had just booked. She was at that point the recurring guest star, but she was made the series regular as the new medical examiner. That's Deanna. And it was her first table read. So it was like to be there together, like I'm standing there, like not knowing anybody. She walks in and she was like, oh my God. So like big hugs and all this other stuff. And then she becomes like the newest full-time member of the cast. And then Mark Harmon is like the kindest man. He like came up to me and put his arm around me and welcomed me to the NCIS family. And like, when I was in the makeup trailer, he came in and was like, so it'd be wonderful if you could sign the episodes, like sign this stack. There's like 20 scripts of today's episode. We collect them to like donate to schools for fundraisers for fans of the show. Like if you ever, if you ever need anything, please reach out to the production office. We'll happily send you stills, autographed stuff to be able to use for silent auctions to support things. Like that's the community of NCIS. How great is that, right?
That's
like,
amazing.
And it speaks to the legacy of the show. And like every time I've very rarely been in a position, and I think with the Croods, I would have done that if we were in person, to be able to spearhead something like that, because how great would that be? Yeah. So I don't know, man. Like there's a film called Danny Collins where I got to work with Al Pacino for a couple nights, and Batman versus Superman, just working with Zack Snyder in Detroit, and meeting Rami Malek and Denzel Washington on The Little Things, and God, Rene Rousseau and Jake Gyllenhaal and Nightcrawler. Like they're like, and Annette Bening was in. I didn't even work with her and Danny Collins, but I went in for like just a wardrobe and makeup test while we were shooting it, and she happened to be in there doing a wig fitting, and was just. She didn't need to say a word to me. She was like, "Oh, hi, what's your name? Who are you? Welcome. What role are you playing? Oh, it's a great role. It's lovely. This is a wonderful crew, and Fogelman's great. And Dan Fogelman was terrific. He went on. He was our director for Danny Collins, and he went on to create This Is Us. So yeah, I mean, it's funny. The memories come out as anecdotes for stories. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's the best. And I still like as much fun, like I still have to say, like Young Rock is of sets to be on, like just the greatest, because our ensemble is so tight. Like we're all really, really close friends. Like last night I was hanging out with Uli, who plays adult Dwayne, and Kevin Makeley, who's Macho Man. And so the three of us were out at Tam O'Shanter's having a rarebit, Scottish rarebit, and we were at a proper Scottish pub last night, and it's just fantastic. So like I'm with these guys all the time, not only on set, but like, back here. So as I said before, this is a relationship business, and if you're lucky to be able to maintain relationships from working on productions, it's the greatest gift ever, and I've been really fortunate to have that with both Young Rock and with the Croods.
Do you have any, sorry, try that one again, failed at English right there.
No worries.
Doing roles in these shows, are there any shows you wish you'd were able to spend a bit more time on or go back to? Because you had such a good time on set with people.
Oh man, there was the Parks and Recreation set was a complete and total blast. Amy Poehler, just the sweetest person, so generous, and her comic mind. Like just to give you a quick anecdote, like we were doing a big town hall scene. This was I was recurring on the show, and I came back, and we did a pass on the scene a couple times. And she was giving me a line, and I was responding to her, and her line was kind of accusatory. And then I responded in kind. And then she paused and left the set for a second, and I'm across the room from her at a microphone, and it's filled with extras. Everybody on the show is there. Rob is there. Adam Scott is there. Like Aubrey Plaza, like the full cast was on stage. And but she came back and had clearly talked to the director and made a choice to completely change the energy of how she talked to my character. And it was just interesting and experimental and fun. Like, it was a really amazing set to be on. Like, part of it is like people who I worked with who I would love to be able to spend more time with, because I just enjoyed my brief interaction with him, like Rene Rousseau, like Matt Damon. I had a great time with Matt on Behind the Candelabra. Pacino. And then directors, man, like Fogelman's amazing. He was a terrific director to work with, and just like so excited. Like, that's the other thing, is like the perception of a director so often is like the guy in charge and sort of smoking a cigar and sitting in another room. But like, so many of these guys are just as fired up, just as excited to be there. Can't believe that everything is coming together the way it is. And I'd give my eye teeth to go back and do some more Richie Rich too. I mean, that was the greatest, just madcap, insane, no stakes. So much fun. I love working with all those kids on that show. Amazing.
As you know,
yep.
I can't speak English and he keeps sneezing. So as I mentioned earlier, you've mentioned yourself, great lasting career in voiceover work, mostly with video games. How did you get into the realm of working on video games?
Oh, man. Moving to Los Angeles was a significant part of that. When I was in Chicago, there was a little bit. EA had a presence there, but then they closed the office shortly after I got into voiceover there. So I got into like one Marvel game, doing some background stuff. But when I got to Los Angeles, that was when more of the there's just more theatrical opportunities. That's it. There's like less commercial stuff. There's not necessarily less commercial. There's still plenty of commercial work, but the amount of theatrical voiceover work that comes to you in Los Angeles versus some of the other markets is pretty substantial. It has a lot to do with casting directors and relationships with agents. So based on the nature of my relationship with my agent and their knowledge of like my desire to get into video games, I started to see more of those auditions. So I did book, my first video game was Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition, and that was a motion capture job, and I booked that out of Detroit. So that was the first gig, and that was Rockstar Games wanted authentic people from the towns that we were doing racing from. So they brought in a kid from Atlanta, they brought in a kid from Detroit, and they brought in a kid from San Diego. And they flew us all to New York, and we went in the volume and put on the ball suits and did motion capture for a racing game. And it was amazing. Rockstar was incredible to work with. But then, when I got to LA, that was when I'd see a considerably more type of work that was like more stuff like The Walking Dead, more stuff like BioShock Infinite, more stuff like, the Telltale Batman series, just more, wonderful theatrical Spider-Man games, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of it. So it's funny how like getting into it is tied much more to who you're repped by and what market you're in. But that in truth, that's why we came here. We came here to do more theatrical work. So, I'm just glad that I've been able to be considered for it and to book it, that's really it. Are you guys in VO stuff? I mean, what's the scene like in London?
I mean, I'm nowhere near London. I'm in Wales, so
okay.
Complete opposite side of the.
My ignorance of your country stands true to my Americanness.
It's all. I love that though. Literally, people either think that you're from London or Australia. I was in Colorado about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was at a bar and I was just having a drink and I was talking to the bar lady. And the girl next to me went, "Oh my God, what part of Australia are you from?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not. But if you want, I can put the accent on. If you want, I can talk Australian if that makes it any easier for you."
Yeah, mate, we can all talk Australian, eh? That'd be great. Good on you, mate.
But with your VO stuff, obviously you were Walter in The Walking Dead Season 2 for Telltale, which I love those games. And obviously you did Roxxon for Spider-Man and that sort of thing. Do you get given a brief, like, this is what we want the voice to sound like, or it's like, yeah, off you go, just give me a voice and let's go with it?
Yeah, sometimes there's a description of what the sound is kind of like. They'll give you an idea in terms of pitch or tone. It's like, this is a deeper voice or a rougher voice or a medium sort of baritone, that kind of thing. And a lot of time it varies game to game, and it depends also on what you're doing. Like, often the more explanation, the more important the character is. Like, if it's just like, you're soldier number 4, that's all you need to know is your soldier number 4. Get down, grenade. And then maybe you do a pass where it's like, get down, grenade. He's international, it's Russian. Get down, grenade. That kind of stuff. So it's about, just doing sloppy impressions and getting through it. Not sloppy. You know what I mean? But trying to make it swing so that ultimately it doesn't take the player out of the game. That's always the goal. Is my job is to be in service to the story. And if you're playing Call of Duty and you're doing like a mosh pit with a bunch of railroad cars on a boat, if my bad dialect takes you out of that game, I have no business in that game, right? Like, is my job is serving the story that the participant is in. I'm part of the wallpaper, so that's the job. And if the wallpaper's too bright or too vibrant or too paisley, you're like, what's wrong with that wallpaper? Then I'm not doing my job. So but then like, learning to read video game scripts is a big deal. And it's something that I teach in the voiceover classes of, like, sometimes you're going to get scripts that come in an Excel spreadsheet because of the asset management. There's like, let's say you're playing a game like Call of Duty, and there's going to be 3 pages for the cinematic where the character is like, listen, I was left behind by my team, and now I'm coming to get revenge on those bastards. And what are you talking about? Like, all that kind of stuff, right? That's the cinematic for the scene. But then, and that's written in screenplay format, so you can see the dialogue, you can see the action, you can see the other characters. But then the Excel spreadsheet is for call outs, for like all the things that the character might say during the course of the game. Now, sometimes you'll see it in dialogue too, where it's just like producing an interactive title that is 20 hours of content is a massive undertaking. And all of the voiceover bits, all the performances are boiled down to elements. So in truth, when a producer is recording you, it's all about asset management. You're just trying to record stems that you're going to plug into the game and the game engine's going to run. So having it organized in an easy fashion, I'm happy to rise up to the moment for a producer who'll go, okay, for this line here where you're talking, you're warning people to stay out of the pit, even though it just simply says agitated. So then I might do a series of 3 on that line where it's like, hey, you get away from there. You give them 3 separate takes on that. So they'll select and say, that's my one for that bit. It sounds agitated, but it's also, so you're really reliant on the voice director to give you context when you're dealing with that. In an animation or a script like that, so much of the context is on the page. So it's like, the slug line tells us we're in the family treehouse and everyone's there and we're all sitting around the table and Uga's bringing some food and Grug says, something stupid or is eating his hands. But the context is all written out for you versus in a video game script, often there's no context at all or very little, or you just have to know how to read Excel. And then that helps you get through it. And the other part of it is cold reading. Cold reading is really, really important because with video games, you never get the script in advance. I'll book jobs. I will literally book jobs and they'll be like, okay, so for Ramonfard, you're booked tomorrow. I'm like, great, Ramonfard. No idea what that is. It's the man's name. You go to the studio and they're like, okay, so this is Far Cry. And you're like, whoa, Far Cry. I didn't know I was in Far Cry. It's like, well, you are. And you're going to be playing this character. And you're like, oh, sweet. But because of NDAs and all that other kind of stuff, because in the past, people have been like, you guys are not going to believe it. In 2 weeks, I play X and so in this game called Far Cry. Perhaps you've heard of it, and people just completely losing their shit on social media, revealing games that haven't been announced. So that's the problem. It's like, and my take on that early on with NDAs was like, it's not my story to tell. I'm part of it, but I'm not the thing. People aren't tuning into The Walking Dead season 2 for me. They're coming to get the continuing story of Clementine. So like, it's not my business to get out and share plot points and stuff, even though people like hungry for it. It's like, it all comes back to story again, of like, I'm giving you the story outside of the context, even though you're hungry for it. It's so much better to experience the story in the context, the way the creators intended for you to do it, rather than watching deleted scenes. I want to see the Snyder cut. I don't want to see the scenes that were cut out, right? I don't want to make my own. Like when Ridley Scott released Gladiator on DVD, he released his director's cut alongside the theatrical, so you could see the stuff that made it a far better movie versus after what the studio trimmed out. Yeah, still old injury.
So with your voiceover work, you've done quite a few recognizable voices, like Han Solo, Woody in Family Guy, Obadiah Stane from Marvel's What If. Like, how did you have to like audition for these? Because you said before you're really good at doing impersonations. Was it a case of, we need an Obadiah Stane, can you do?
Yes. I every job that you see on there, I've auditioned for. I auditioned for everything. And the volume of things I've auditioned for that I haven't booked is legion. So it's like, part of that is part of the process with voice matching, because I don't, at the risk of going too humble about it, I'm like, I'm a Midwestern guy with a baritone voice with a lot of control over it and a really good ear. So if I go into Nicolas Cage, I know, first of all, there's a phrasing and a music to his particular dialect. It's breathy, but also back of the throat. So then also, if you just pivot into RDJ, so Robert Downey Jr., not really that far off from Nick Cage either. A little bit less breathy. Okay. So also that, like, okay, so is like my key in that valley thing. But then, Harrison Ford is down here. So, the music is totally different versus Tom Hanks. Hanks is, he's open and just a very, generous spirit. Where's Vince Vaughn, who's up here, faster, quicker talker, right? Like in this spot. So like, it's all of those characters live in different spots in my voice, and knowing how to access it. It's literally like figuring out, it's physical. So like, if you're in a gym and you're doing legs, you're working your lower part of your body. So like for me, vocally, Harrison, Jason Statham, who else down here? Ryan Winstone, right? So like, all those live in the same pocket, but then there's just little pivots that get you into that spot, and there are rotations. So then your ear helps you sort that. But then again, also microphone work and spending the time in, Grandpa's studio doing that. I've been working on that craft, and to be able to slip between my entire career. And I didn't start doing voice matching until I was in my 40s, professionally, because I would have loved to go on to Saturday Night Live, but impressions weren't something that we were really doing at Second City. That wasn't the kind of work that a lot of my castmates wanted to explore. So I just didn't. And then I hid that under a bushel until I was in Chicago. When I got into Chicago, I kind of started doing impressions, and people were like, what? Where did these come from? I'm like, yeah. So I think the first voice match thing I booked was a series of demos as Owen Wilson for Chili's that never end up coming together. But yeah, I'm going to Chili's. That was like, it was basically,
That was literally magnificent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe that's tell me and Tom love watching people do impressions. So that was the best.
It's great. But like, it's the greatest party trick ever. But then the other part of it too is like, most of this work is very, very subjective. You could watch a movie and walk out and have vastly different opinions of the film. But the one thing of this craft that is not subjective is impressions. You either sound like the guy or you don't. And everybody is an expert. everybody's an expert at going, what? That's not Al Pacino. That Al Pacino shit. But then you're like, well, no, that's Al Pacino in Heat. That's not Al Pacino in, my Al Pacino is Al's, here. My Al Pacino is sort of vapid, kind of a cross between Son of a Woman, Al, and Heat. Look, I don't know what you want from me, that kind of a thing. But versus Al Pacino and The Godfather, very, very different. So it's just a matter of where your strengths are. I can't do young Harrison Ford, but give me Harrison Ford, Force Awakens, and after. We were being hunted, not versus my buddy AJ LaCasio does a perfect young Harrison. And it's like Harrison through the Indiana Jones films. And Scott White does him really, really well too. There's a lot of guys. There's not a lot of guys who really nail him. There's a lot of guys who can get close, who could do like a gruff, get off my plane, that sort of thing. But trying to get the nuance, that's the other part of it. And the part that I feel really comfortable and confident in is like, there's the impression, but then there's the matching aspect of it. And matching is not just doing the voice, but what you do with it. So, Harrison, like it's a magic trick to do Harrison's voice. But then when we were doing Call of the Wild, I was going in and doing voiceover for him and, talking about, where is it? It's my son. We have to go far, far beyond maps, figuring out how to do the voice, but then play him. I've got to act as well as Harrison would act. So that requires a different set of skills of really being emotionally available and then playing through the mask of the character. And that's what The Croods is about. That's what animation's about. Like my favorite episode is Daddy Daughter Day of the Croods family tree. And there's so much pathos and longing and feelings of loss and warmth and joy in it that it was really emotional to do. And I'm doing it all through the mask of Grug. And it's just really satisfying. Same thing with Pat, with Pat Patterson. I get to do a lot with that character. And I started by listening to his ring commentary and Hall of Fame and induction speech and that kind of stuff. And not leaning into the French Canadian aspect of his dialect, because he didn't speak a word of English when he came to the States. So when he got to Boston was where he learned English. So his English is tinted with a bit of a Boston dialect. So, so my way into Pat was always never not smiling, always gregarious. And, kind of talking like Quentin Jaws, you know what I mean? So it's this kind of a thing, but that's it. That was kind of where I began. And then we would play.
I was going to talk about Young Roxy. You just sort of segued for me there. That was great.
Oh, good.
That's a bit of teamwork. I enjoyed that. But you do an amazing portrayal of Pat.
Thank you.
How much did you know about Pat? Were you a wrestling fan before you got this role?
Yeah, I was a wrestling fan from growing up. So I didn't know about Pat. I pieced out on wrestling probably around maybe the fourth WrestleMania. Like I was really into it up until not because of Hogan body slamming Andre, but that was the period of time that I was really into it. You know what I mean? Early to mid 80s. And then I was out. I missed the Attitude Era entirely. I only recognized Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock from people's t-shirts. So I was aware of who they were, but I didn't really watch it. So, but then getting the opportunity to audition for the role and then really learning about who Pat was, the crazy thing was I was like, okay, he's a commentator. I got that. I didn't know that he was the first openly gay wrestler that until after I had done the audition. I wasn't aware. So I played him very much the sides. The sides were not specific about who he was talking to. So I didn't know he was talking, like that kind of stuff. It was still very much under secret. So I just kind of committed and then I'm fairly certain. Well, I don't know. No one ever told me how I booked it, but I just know that the energy of what I was bringing was the right thing. And I remember when I was flying from LA to Queensland to go shoot. On our flight was Brian Gewirtz and Chavo Guerrero Jr., who were, Brian is one of our executive producers and creative consultants. He's kind of DJ's ear for us on set, and as well as bringing his own experience to bear. And then Chavo is our wrestling coordinator, and Chavo knew Pat. Both of them knew Pat extremely well. And they were like, bro, he was like, what you did in the audition and what you did in our table reads was so Pat. It was like, you don't have to change a thing. It's just, and I feel like everything I needed was on the page and out and about in some of the media that I found. And, really just try to think of him in that way, in particular, in terms of our story, of where Pat joins Dwayne is really what the story is from my arc. So a lot of it is I'm coming from a place of being a mentor, being like Mickey and Rocky, but also, just one of the guys. Like, one of my favorite scenes is the scene when you first meet him and he's coming in with Andre in the 3rd episode of season 2, and everyone's sitting around the table and stuff. And like, it feels really relaxed and fun. Like we all know each other because we did. By that time we had all hung out for a couple months. So the time you finally seeing everybody together, there was no awkwardness. There was no introductions at the table. It was all like, hey, Macho, hey, come on, hey, how you doing, Rocky? So like all that was very authentic. When we were quarantined together, we spent all of our time together. We holidayed together. So it really made all of the historical stuff in Young Rock, really authentic, because we all really truly love each other, and it really comes through on screen.
I love that. But is there like an added pressure portraying a real life person, especially someone as important as Pat, not only to the business, but to Dwayne himself, the guy that is making this show? Or is it a case of, this is a role, this is what they expect of me, I'm just going to focus on that?
Yes. That's present. There is an element of that you have to ignore. I'll give you an example. Completely unrelated thing. Like, if I'm getting ready to go like MC some event for a company, and we're in Las Vegas, and there's I'm about to get on stage and do 5 minutes with an impression or two and work the crowd a little bit, and then introduce a speaker. And then the executive vice president of the company is standing next to him, and I'm going to be introducing them. And then they lean forward, and you see 3,000 people out in the audience, and they're all milling about. And he leans over and goes, no pressure. And I'm like, my response to that is kind of like, listen, pencil neck, you do your job and I'll do mine. Like, really, I'm like, I'm like, getting in front of 3,000 people on stage for 5 minutes is nothing to me. There's no stakes. My job is to go up there and connect to one person, regardless of however many people are out there. I don't need to connect to all of them simultaneously. If I connect to one, I connect to 3,000. And two, like, my job is to make it easy. I want it to be fun. So like, don't add pressure. I'm aware of whatever pressure is present, sure, but you don't need to apply it. So in the context of Young Rock, I feel like what was great, and it had a lot to do with the supportive team, and like, people are aware of that. No one is vibing you, giving you that kind of stuff. It's always like, hey man, what you're doing is great. Like, Brian came up to me in Singapore when we were getting ready to fly down to go be in quarantine for two weeks. He was like, can I give you a line reading? And I was like, yes, please. I was like, this is how Pat would say it. Because I had recorded it a certain way. And then Brian would give me, he's like, this is how Pat would say the joke. Do you know who was just talking to you? Nobody. That was the music of the line. He's like, that's how Pat would say it. I'm like, that's all I need to know. But that line would give me clues to how to interpret other lines. So like there's a bit in where I come in, if you know the scene where Dwayne is he's called Pat to come to the gym, and Rocky doesn't know that Pat's coming. And Pat shows up, and they're in the ring, and it's Dwayne's basically his tryout. And Pat goes, "It's a fucking boxing ring," and that was written in the script as this is a boxing ring. So it didn't have any of that music on it, but I just made that choice because that's how Pat would react to things. I'm like, "What are you talking about? This is a big you idiot," you know, that kind of stuff. So finding that music and embracing that music and playing it, and then you learn after a while that people don't give you notes if they like what you're doing. There's no time. Maybe they'll pat you on the back, but if they print it, that means they like it. If they don't like it, they'll tell you. So I knew that if DJ didn't like what I was doing with Pat, if it didn't ring true for Brian or for Shavo or for Jeff or any of our other directors, then I knew that someone would tell me. And I just had to trust my interpretation. And the other part of that too is like, they've got a million things that they're doing. My job is to be the subject matter expert on Pat Patterson. So if we're in a situation, and like we found an improvisation when I first met Adrian about, like, it was a really funny line. I forget what it was, but I ad-libbed a bunch of other things that all worked. And, but you know, I was ad-libbing within the context of what I knew about Pat. And then when we got to Australia, one of the really, really helpful people was the guy who played Mean Gene Okerlund, Dave Koenig. Dave was a massive wrestling fan, and he gave me so much wonderful insight into Pat, into his the Stooges era, like all of just the importance, how he had come up with the Royal Rumble, like just Pat's massive influence and how large he looms over the entire WWE. So it was really, really insightful. There was, I mean, you just want to be able to have answers for your own stuff, and knowing the nature of his relationship to Louis and all of that was so important to inform every choice that you make in the moment. Because they're just momentary choices, but it's all based on your experience, right? Like, it's the same thing.
I love that you and Dwayne are on initials, though. That's the it's
Yeah, he calls me
Dwayne
KV.
Johnson.
Dwayne calls me KV. I don't think Dwayne doesn't talk about me at all. All I know is like I haven't met him. We did one Zoom where we all did the table read for season 2, episode 1 and 2. And that was the first time he saw me do Pat live. And Brian told me after the fact that he was watching DJ's reaction to everybody's performance, all the new guys. And when I did Pat, both calling the match and then also meeting young him, he was like, Pat was just, or Dwayne was just grinning from ear to ear. So that was enough. That was enough. And then I've been really moved and touched by how many folks in the wrestling fandom community who have just been so kind with compliments and comments about not only the accuracy of the performance that I've done, but how they've enjoyed the characterization, and how, more importantly, how I just at the end of the day, I did right by Pat. That's really it. Of like, I just wanted to make sure that I did right by Pat, and by his legacy, and that was really important to me.
I think you've smashed out of the proverbial ballpark. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that, man.
I can't encourage people listening to this enough to go check out Young Rock if they've not watched it. It's phenomenal. The actors are so good. And two that I took away from it, who just smashed it out of the park, was yourself and Yuli. He's incredible.
It's incredible.
I was like, that is Dwayne. Like, that is...
He's what, and I mean, I spent a good chunk of the day with him yesterday. He really is not only like a consummate professional, a really driven, what he's done with his body over the course of the 3 seasons in terms of getting himself in the physical shape to execute what he's got to do. He's playing one of the most iconic bodies in popular culture in the past 30 years. So he has to mirror that, you talk about a guy who's aware of the pressure and expectation, but then also do the dramatic work, play the highs and lows of DJ's journey. And I really appreciate, it's the surprise of the show. When I booked it, I hadn't watched the first season, and I booked it, and my wife and I sat down and just binged the first season. And I was really surprised as to how much I absolutely adored it. Like, it really, there's so much heart, and Dwayne is so open about his own personal challenges and his journey and his growth and his willingness to reveal elements about his own, his like the Christmas episode was so great this year about, how he was trying to give a gift to Mick Foley to really impress him. And Mick showed him that, you want to impress me, giving is way more important, and giving to people is his sweet spot, not receiving big fancy shit. And it was just really sweet to like see them work through that kind of stuff. But then also through the eyes of the show, really going on, following Uli's journey through that, and Bradley's and Adrian's and Stacy and Joe's as well. And honest, like, the core family group is they get to do so much wonderful, hard work. It's a really beautiful family show. I mean, we're up for I think it's the Kids' Choice Awards. So fingers crossed for tonight. But like, it's one of those family shows that really truly appeals to everybody. And I feel like I really want us to find a broader audience, because I think the more people discover it, the more they'll really, really like it. It's a terrific show.
Absolutely. One of the final episodes of this season, might even be the final one, when he gives his parents the house, might be one of the most heartwarming scenes I've ever watched on any show ever. I was like, this is beautiful. Yeah, it's an incredible show. I can't push it enough to people.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your advocacy for it. And I'm just so glad you watched and took it in. It's a terrific show.
Before we start wrapping up, though, I did want to mention you have your own podcast, sir.
Yeah.
All over voiceover. It may seem obvious by the name, but for those unaware, what's it about?
It's about demystifying getting into voiceover. It's about talking to my fellow actors and directors, casting directors, agents, animation directors, audiobook narrators, producers, just kind of figuring out what people's process is in terms of how they interpret copy, what their influences are, what their advice is. To me, it's just been an exploration of other people's process. It started as I'd sit in that lobby at CESD at my talent agency and hang out and talk about everything under the sun with all the actors waiting to go in. And we had a great time. But the one thing we never talk about, because it's kind of, this is where we're going to go in and be competitive, is the nature of the work that we're there to do. So creating a separate space like a podcast, being an opportunity to, as I was joking earlier, half joking, amplify each other, but like also like it gave me the opportunity to build relationships to people that under normal circumstances I could. And I'm an extrovert. Like in voiceover, everyone is an independent contractor and working by themselves. So I'd see Scott White for, about an hour, him and Chantel hanging out in the lobby, doing bits. Love those guys. Amazing. See you later. Next time, maybe we have the same script, or next time it might be 2 weeks. It might be a month and a half. So the podcast is an opportunity to reach out to some of these guys and be like, hey, I'd love to talk with you about this, and this. I mean, my episode, I don't know if you guys have listened, but the episode with Deborah Wilson, the episode with Kari Walgren, the episode with Tadashore, with Scott, with AJ, and then recently with Serena or JB Blanc. I mean, there's so many amazing people sharing so much, and it's very conversational. It's very relaxed. you're going to hear me tell the same story over and over again. but still, I mean, I really wanted to make certain that that I was able to bring in as many diverse voices as well, because there's always a white guy on my show. So I wanted to make sure that I'm talking to a really broad, it'd be really easy for me to bring in like all of my white guy friends. There's quite a few, but it was like still like really, let's get more women in, let's get more people of color in to talk about the experiences and the challenges. And then what I learned in the process of getting to talk to them too has really enriched my life and my career. And I go back and listen to episodes just because it's a great little encyclopedia and capturing of a period of time. And I think there's a lot of great stuff that can really help folks. So I invite everyone who is interested in voiceover to check out the show, All Over Voiceover. You can also go to the website, allovervo.com, and you can stream stuff there.
Kiff, this has been so much fun. I absolutely love this. It's genuinely one of my favorites we've ever done. Mr. Stevens, do you have any more questions, sir?
I do. I have two, if that's okay with you, Kiff.
Of course.
What I want, you've briefly touched on it quite a few times, that you now teach, obviously, voiceover, sketch comedy, etc. Passing your knowledge, your expertise toward the future generations that are all coming up, etc. I think it's phenomenal that you do that. I think it's amazing that you've honed your craft for so long now. You're like, I'm only going to be here for so long. I want to pass on what I know and pass on, to the people coming up and etc.
Yeah.
What made you want to do that?
Oh, it started at Second City, where I got cast as an understudy to the touring company, and they would give you free classes. That was the benefit of getting cast. They didn't pay you, but they would give you free classes. So I took 2 free classes, and then the next class was all about character. I really wanted to take that class, and it kept being filled up, and they wouldn't knock someone out and basically give me a jump seat in the class. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So Rico, the producer, was like, listen, you want to teach? I was like, what? He was like, yeah, you could teach an intro class and just start teaching. That way you can make a little bit of money, and here's the curriculum, and go for it. And I was thrown into the deep end and started teaching, and really grew to love it, and just haven't stopped. Because I started teaching improv, and then would level up through there, and then started directing, and then teaching directing. It's kind of like these two things have always sort of run together. And I'm teaching right now kind of off and on with Kalmanson & Kalmanson here in Los Angeles, but then also doing private coaching and that kind of thing. And then teaching with the Mocap Vaults. I'm teaching a class called Pure Imagination in a couple of weeks, where we use learning improv skills specifically for motion capture and use in the motion capture vaults for cinematics, for in-game, all those other kind of things. So really trying to spin through it. I love group work. I love an ensemble, and a class is an ensemble. A class is this unique, special little spot where 9 of us, 10 of us are trying to figure something out together. And I'm a camp counselor in that context. Like, I hold some information, and I can guide you through a curriculum, but I can also be available to answer questions, demystify stuff. And I think that's part of why the podcast, it was like, absolutely, it helped like amplify my brand a little bit, and it got me new friends, but it also functions as an extension of my class and my teaching work. So it's an opportunity to be able to have these places that are available and keep people company while they're driving. I love like coming up with class ideas. Like when I did a class I started with a voiceover class at Second City that was kind of like an intro to VO, which was basically like, this is a microphone. This is the smart part of it. This is the part you want to talk into, proximity, all the stuff I was telling you about earlier. You need to have a Focusrite box, et cetera, et cetera. Like just kind of that kind of stuff where I could give you this information and give you recommendations. But then it was like, let's do a class about specifically about voice matching. Let's do an improv class for voiceover, specifically like, how does improv influence VO in an animated script? How do you apply those skills for this work, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It just comes off of challenges that I run into and then navigate, and then trying to share those things. So that's basically at the heart of my work.
It's great. It's incredible and truly inspirational as well. Like I could listen to you talk for hours. I'll be honest.
Well, you can all over voiceover. Why there's 90 some episodes, and there's an hour of it, so there's 90 episodes you can listen to.
But finally, Kip, before we do let you go here, I mean, when you first started your journey with improv and voiceover, etc., did you ever think that this is where you would be today?
Yeah.
Yes, love that answer.
I love that.
But because why else? And I don't want to come off like, I don't want to sound arrogant, but it's confidence. It's like, why chase it? Harrison Ford says in Clear and Present Danger, and I use this line all the time, I didn't come in here with my hat in my hand. I didn't come to this town with a, please, sir, will you please let me come and play? I came in here with the confidence that I needed to be able to go into a room and say, I belong. To be able to come over to the table and pull a seat up and go, hi, I'm Kiff. What's your name? And meet you eye to eye and be like, this is what I can do. Here's my skills. And what can you do? And be amazed and blown away and excited to get to know so many different people and become friends with them, but like also have the confidence in myself to say, I belong too. And maybe, maybe I can't do what you can do, but I can do what I can do. And maybe there's value in that. It was really funny. We were walking in Australia across in Nature Bridge in Queensland. There's this beautiful national park of like different places to hike. And Nature Bridge is like this 1.5 kilometer walk that goes down by a waterfall and over a bunch of falled trees through kind of a rainforest. And a bunch of us went, and the guy who played Luke Hawks, who plays Stone Cold Steve Austin, was with us, and Arlen, who plays Danny. And like there were several of us together. We were walking, and then Arlen was like, hey, Kiff, do your impressions. So I did a handful. I did Robert Downey Jr. and Nick Cage and Harrison Ford and stuff. And I got done, and they were all laughing, and Luke was standing there. And then Luke goes, I can bench press 300 pounds. And it was so funny. It was like, it was the perfect response. And I love Luke, man. He's so cool. He's the funniest guy. And it was like this really beautiful, celebration of what I could do, and him going, well, I can't do that. And then I was like, yeah, but I can't bench press 300 pounds. I can't do what you do. And I know he wasn't like eating worms or anything like that. It was just him being funny, but it was still like, it was such a cool moment. But it was, I bring that up because it's that aspect of it, of like, I want to be the guy at the table who can do the things that I do, not just in terms of my work, but again, like, as a listener and as a collaborator and as a team member, like, I've had the benefit of working in a wide variety of spaces. And that's been because if I just specialized in one place, when that one place dries up or is slow, you're screwed. So so much of what I'm doing is based on necessity. If I can work on camera, if I can do voice matching, if I can narrate an audiobook, if I can do promo or learn it, there's what one man can do, another can do. Everything is knowable, especially now between podcasts and classes at UCLA or at any university. You can take classes online. All this stuff is completely knowable. And if our job while we're here on this planet is to try to find a way to fulfill what's inside of us, what's stopping you? And believe me, I still have time to dick around and play super hot in VR and get my ass kicked in Call of Duty 2. I still have time to do that stuff. I still have time to be a dad, take my kid to Disney World and do all those things. But like, this work makes that possible. And the portability of it, hang on, this is going to sound loud, but like the ability to have a relatively small footprint when it comes to equipment allows me to go out and do. Like, People talk about voiceover being the golden handcuffs, and I refuse to believe that notion. That just means you're going to get paid a lot, but you got to stay in your booth all day long, and that's where the opportunities are going to come to you. That's true. But if I take my booth and take it in the car and find a way to record quietly, then I'm not restricted. You know, when I was in Australia doing Young Rock, I bought a portable booth from Snap Studio for $450 and set it up in my bathroom in Australia so that I could continue to do work for the Croods, because I was out of town for 5 months, but I was a series regular on a show. So they couldn't backlog all that work. I really had to get permission from DreamWorks to take the job. And when I solved that problem for him and said, look, I'm going to find a studio, I'll have recording space, I'll have everything we need to make it work. I will solve that problem for you. If we need, because of the time zone difference, if you need me at 6 o'clock in the morning recording, I'm there at 6 o'clock ready to work. So it was that willingness to say yes to as many opportunities as possible. And consequently, while I was in Australia, in that same bathroom, I narrated 2 audiobooks. I dubbed 2 animes, including the movie Belle. I did multiple episodes, not only of The Croods, but also, I voice matched Optimus Prime and a bunch of trailers for Primal, like a bunch of stuff. So like it was every day I continued to audition, booked commercial work. So like, it's just a matter of thinking a little bit and solving the problem and saying, yeah, I can figure that out. That's made all the difference for me. And that's what I encourage anyone who's listening who wants to do this work is like, you really want to be able to just say yes. You want to be able to say yes to your agents. You want to be able to say, yes, I have availability. And, you know, believe me, there's value in saying no and protecting yourself, but there's also filtering through what is that? Is me saying no because I don't feel like it? Or is it me saying no because it's becoming detrimental? So it's figuring out that kind of stuff for me. Yeah, I love what I do. So I want to do it all the time. And if I got a job at 4 o'clock in the morning in Australia in my bathroom after rapping at 2, I'm going to make it work, because for a second I get to play Batman. For a second, I get to play Optimus Prime. I get to be the things that I wanted to be when I was a kid. So I'm paying it back.
Absolutely
Incredible.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh, you are so inspirational. I love to
Thanks,
listen
man.
to you. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Before we let you go, any plug, social medias, websites you want people to go check out, my friend?
Yeah. My first and foremost, the podcast, all over voiceover. If you're interested, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at KiffVH, KIFFVH. My demo reels and madness are at my website at kiffvh.com. There's also a way to reach out to me if you're interested in private counseling. I'm also a licensed therapist. I actually stumbled into something. This is a whole nother story. I know you're trying to wrap up, but like I was taking a class at UCLA Extension and had to blog. So I started blogging on my website. One of the things I ran across was this notion of artistic injury, of having something or someone hurt you in your artistic space. I had been pursued for 3 years to be on America's Got Talent. I finally agreed. I went on. The producers gave me a running order of who they wanted me to do, and it wasn't organic, but I did it anyway, and went on at 11 o'clock at night, didn't connect to the audience, didn't connect to the judges, and to have Heidi Klum and Howie Mandel clap at you like that was it. When you're doing your superpower, I felt like, in a way, I felt like Superman catching a rocket and then getting called on the carpet by Congress. Batman versus Superman. It felt the same way. It was like I'm doing the thing, and you're crapping on it. And the very next day, I had a job doing Han Solo. Like at that point in my animation career, it was like the greatest job I'd ever had the very next day. But it was still like this impact of like having Heidi Klum, like clapping slowly, looking at Mel B, like, what do we do with this guy? Like, it was it just hurt. And I didn't know why I was feeling kind of down. And my wife was like, you need to go improvise. You need to go find your play again. They took something from you. So you need to go get it back. So a couple of friends of mine have been doing a show called Buddy Puzzle. And it was once a month. You do one scene, 1 5-minute mono scene, no cutaways or whatever, with 2 people. So I called my old buddy from Second City, Cleveland, Randall Haar, and we went and we played, and would do it once a month, and it was enough, and it got my confidence back. But it was like recognizing that you can be injured by other people, and not physically, not even necessarily emotionally, but through your artistic journey. You know, if someone hits you on a DM on Instagram, and it's happened a couple times, people are like, your grug sucks. You know, I've gotten to a place now where my skin has gotten thicker, and I'm kind of like, fuck off. You know, whatever. What are you doing? Put down the big gulp and go buy a microphone. Then do a better Nicolas Cage than me and talk to me in 10 years. But like, you know, there is that element of like, you go out of your way to diminish someone's efforts. It just feels really, whatever. But I have kind of, in that process of discovering that idea, started working with folks, you know, occasionally, of like, you can sign up on my website for VO therapy. Let's talk about what happened, talk about that, and work to find strategies to empower yourself and rebuild your confidence. As I said right at the beginning of this thing, this business is about confidence, and people out there, as Flavor Flav says at the end of He Got Game, be on the lookout for the spirit snipers trying to steal your light. They're out there, man. They're out there. You know, they're out there. So it's figuring out how to protect yourself from them. And if you're an open channel, like you take it all in. So it's figuring out how to filter and strengthen yourself when it does get past. So those are things that I'm working on, trying to share and encourage folks. And sometimes people just need to talk about where they're at in their career, and they don't need advice, and they don't need a class. They just need to be heard and be told, like, hey man, you know, talk to me. Why are you struggling with, you know, I haven't booked in 6 months. I'm like, well, okay, let's figure that out. Not necessarily why aren't you booking, but what's your intention? Are you trying to book, or are you trying to play the character? Those are 2 different things, and it radically transforms it. And these are things that I struggle with myself. So, yeah. So there you go. Those are some of the things I'm plugging. Watch Young Rock, watch the Croods Family Tree. Watch, you know, Marvel. There's some new things coming. Go ride Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland and Disney World. I am the auctioneer pirate on the ride. So if you are riding through the diorama and you'll hear, "Weigh anchor now, you swabbies. What be I offered for these hearty hens? Each one an egg layer." That's me. So it's cool to be a part of Disneyland. It's pretty awesome.
It's amazing. And fuck those keyboard warriors. No one gives, like, some people think that they've just got a platform to say whatever the hell they like now, and it just does my head in. So I feel you, kid. Fuck those guys. Like, who cares? Yeah, man.
Yeah. And they're entitled to your opinion. You don't have to like it, but at the same time, then shut up. It's this work is too hard. Like, even I've gotten incredibly forgiving of movies because, man, like, Avatar: Way of the Water is a staggering technical achievement. Have I seen that story before? Variations, yeah. Is it a best picture? Yeah. It's a best picture, not because of the story, but because of what they did technically. It's staggering. Is it better than Everything Everywhere All at Once? Absolutely not. But comparing those two is impossible. They're you know, like, and what the Daniels did with that movie of being able to use the staggering multitudes of different styles and still tell a coherent, deeply moving story and integrate the elements of martial arts and combat and it's just a staggering achievement. And so like comparing those two things, it's unfair to both of them. And, you know, and the longer you work in this business, I learned a really valuable lesson with, and I'll help wrap this up. I learned a valuable lesson with Batman versus Superman because I was so excited to participate in it. Zach's one of my favorite directors leading up to it. I've got like, I saw your Batman tattoo, so I got my Superman tattoo here. I got this.
Oh, amazing.
Australia. Yeah, it's like it's the Man of Steel Superman logo, but like, so like it means a great deal to me. And I was like, after shot it, sat on it for a year and a half. The movie finally comes out, and everybody and their brother like crapped on the film, but then would come on my Facebook page and go, "You were the best part of that movie. You know, don't take it personal, but blah 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 blah." And you're like, why are you bringing that to my doorstep? And one of my friends worked at Legendary, and she reflected back to me that I had gone on Facebook and posted a long rant about how much I was upset by the movie Godzilla with Bryan Cranston. And she was like, "We're proud of that film. You didn't pull any punches." And you got to remember that at the heart of these things, these movies are not monoliths. They're expressions of the artistic virtues and values of so many people. Even something that's really easy to dismiss, people care about what they're building. You want it to be cool. So it's really changed my perspective in terms of how I engage with work that I don't care for, how I engage with work that I do, and how I respect, even in a project that I don't like from a story standpoint, how I respond to the performances, to the set design, to the cinematography, to the sound design, etc. These things they create so many opportunities in work, and it's everyone's livelihood. So it changes your perspective on it a little bit. It's real easy to just go, that movie's shit. It's like, yeah, maybe to you, but you didn't see the director's vision. You didn't see the whole cut. You didn't see it in the right frame of mind. You had an expectation, but then you revisit it 6 months later and you're like, you know what? I was wrong. The movie was amazing. Like, yeah, that's right. So anyway, that's my little
right. People listen to take that on board. Yeah, that is so true. So true.
My buddy Kevin Leese is a prop guy on Suicide Squad, on David Ayer's Suicide Squad. And he told me, like, in the props, he's like, we made 6 baseball bats for Harley. And Margot Robbie came in and went through all of them and was poring over them and looking at them and selected the bat that she used that we made. And she participated in the design elements of it. And Will Smith, when he was choosing Deadshot's gun, like, collaborated with them and talked about it. And then they made multiple versions of that, and they selected those things. And like, this resonates with my character. We're in service of the story. I've told this story multiple times before, but I met Harrison Ford and after a show I directed at Second City, and we were talking, and he told me the bit was, he was like, you know, someone says, Harrison Kiff teaches voiceover. He goes, really? Well, how do you teach voiceover? Like, I was like, I'm sort of like Richard Attenborough in Jurassic Park. I'm like, welcome to voiceover. He goes, you know what teach someone is what to do when you get on set. That'd be a class someone should teach. And I was like, okay, Mr. Set, what's your curriculum for that class? Like, it's not like you haven't been on set for 50 years. Like, what do you recommend? And he took a bite of his chicken skewer and he went, And then about 20 minutes later, he leans across the table from me and he goes, here's the thing that no one understands about this business. This is a service industry, and we are in service to the existential truth of the story. No one is above that. So make certain that if you're teaching people anything about being on set, that's what you tell them. So that's what I tell people. We're in service, and, you know, the props department is in service. Cinematography and cameras are in service to the story. The actors are in service to the story. The story is this amorphous thing. It's intangible. We're embodying it and letting it breathe through us. So our job is to be as open as possible and supportive as possible. And if our focus is that, then we're firing all cylinders. Where things get in trouble is when we put our egos above it. that's where it struggles. And that's an internal challenge for every single person. So it's a matter of finding a way to get your ego out of the way, open yourself up to telling the story, do your work, be ready, do your best work. And it will help let the story breathe the way it needs to.
Absolutely beautiful. You wonderful man, you. I really think we should wrap this up before we're here for another hour, because I know
Gotcha.
it could happen. This is amazing.
Awesome.
This has been
Rick.
absolutely amazing. Like, I've loved every single second of it. Thank you so much for taking your time out to come and chat to us today.
Oh, man. Dude, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I'm glad that the show resonated with you, and thank you so much for discovering my other work and for reaching out. Yeah, it's great to know you guys.
Yeah, you too, my friend. We're going to drop this on Friday, 6 p.m. UK. So what's that going to be? That's going to be like early for you, isn't it?
10 a.m.
That's cool.
Yeah,
no worries. I'll amplify it when I get up or set something up. But that's so awesome. Thanks so much, guys. What a blast.
Not at all. Yeah, thanks, man. Have a great day. Look after yourself, and we'll speak to you soon. Cheers,
bet.
Kev. Take care, buddy.
Peace.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just superb.
Oh. We do love a Jamie catchphrase. We
do love a Jamie catchphrase.
Yeah, thank you so much, man, for coming on the show. We absolutely love talking to you. And honestly, we wanted to keep going, but obviously for time, we were a little bit stretched. So I think we might have to do a round two. It was absolutely sensational. Thank you for taking the time out, man. I just loved every second of it.
And the greatest intros ever recorded.
Yeah.
We can say we've had Nicolas Cage introduce our show.
Guys, we hope you enjoy listening to it. I stumbled over my words. Let me start that again. We hope that you enjoyed listening to it as much as we did recording it.